So we're going to go ahead and get started. We are here today for our seventh webinar of UDL 9 and 9, and it's sponsored by the Goodwin University Institute for Learning Innovation and the Center for Teaching Excellence. It's also sponsored by our sister institution. We are connected at the enterprise level, the University of Bridgeport Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. We're really, really excited. As I said before, this is being recorded. Keep your mics muted, but feel free to raise your hand, use the chat, and we'll leave it to our wonderful presenters today to tell you to unmute if they want you to ask the question, or otherwise use the chat, and I'll let them explain what they prefer. And moving ahead, as I said a minute ago, we're really excited. UDL 3.0 is out. Rob is put a link to that in the chat. And so if you notice on the screen here, the purple sort of rectangular shape in the screen on the left, well, would be my left-hand side, you'll see the new image. Looks very similar. The colors are going to be the same. And so Joe Houghton and Elizabeth Hitches are going to talk to us today about using AI and UDL for inclusive learning, really focusing on this particular guideline. And Joe is an assistant professor and program director from the University College of Dublin, Smurfit Graduate School of Business in Ireland. And Elizabeth joins us at what must be now about 4 a.m. in the morning. And she's a sessional, I guess is how you say it, academic in inclusive education. She's also a PhD candidate. Yay, comes from somebody who I have worked in that area and graduated many doctors, shall we say. And so she's at the Institute for Social Science Research at the University of Queensland. So this is our seventh Universal Design for Learning webinar. It will be posted on YouTube after the recording gets cleaned up. And without further ado, I am going to stop my screen share and go ahead and let Joe and Elizabeth take over. So again, welcome. Please use the chat. If you haven't yet told us where you're from, please do that. We'll be monitoring the chat. So welcome, Joe and Elizabeth.
Okay, let me just share the screen. There we go. So thanks, Diana. And great to be with you all. Both Elizabeth and I have been looking forward to this for a while, and I think I can speak for both of us to say that we're quite honoured to have been asked to be part of this series as well. I was fortunate enough to find out early on when New Directions for Teaching and Learning special issue was being put together, and I got in touch with Rob and with Diana, and ended up writing the opening chapter for that. So that's how I've kind of been connected with Goodwin, and Elizabeth and I are kind of colleagues across the world. Really, we met at a UDL conference a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure Tom was doing something at that conference as well, and we've kind of stayed in touch ever since, and we've done a number of seminars and stuff since. So we're both quite excited to be presenting today. Is my share working? Is everybody seeing the first slide? And is the sound okay? Yeah, all good. Fantastic. Okay. So we are going to move through then, and the first thing we're going to go with is something that talks very much to culture, and I'm going to hand over to Elizabeth for this one.
Thank you so much. So if you can't tell by my accent, I am joining from Australia, which might feel like a long way away. It definitely is an early morning, but so worth it. And something that we do in Australia, given our history, is we like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we join. So I'd love to give the acknowledgement of country from where I'm joining from today. So we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we're all joining from today, and recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. We pay our respects to their elders, ancestors, and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, and acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining here today or engaging with the recording. We'd like to also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you're joining from, knowing that this is international, and we'd really be grateful to acknowledge your elders as well. Now, where does this actually tie in with UDL? Well, we have this wonderful part of the UDL 3.0 framework now, which really asks us to consider those cultural perceptions. So consider the perceptions of people and culture, acknowledging and valuing multiple ways of knowing, including those that extend beyond Western approaches to knowledge. And CAST tells us that this shift aims to create a more inclusive and equitable learning environment that respects and integrates diverse cultural perspectives. So it's really wonderful to know that one of the practices that we have here in Australia, that acknowledgement of country, and I know there are similar in other parts of the world, can now actually have a home in that CAST 3.0 framework. Thanks so much to Diana and Joe for that introduction. I am a sessional academic, and I'm really lucky to be able to talk about inclusive education all the time. It's my absolute favourite topic, so I really enjoy that. I'm also a consultant on UDL and academic stress, which is the area that my PhD study is on, taking a really inclusive approach to remove some of those academic stresses, hopefully reduce that stress before it even eventuates. I do have some links on those slides, and those slides will be available, and that takes you to ways that you can engage with my research and also keep the connection going and stay in touch with me.
Okay, and as Diana said, I'm based in Dublin in Ireland. Married to Penny, who's now a psychotherapist. I've got 4 kids, from grown up down to 11, and I've been, I suppose, involved with UDL for about 5 or 6 years now. We have a very strong UDL rollout and implementation in Ireland, and some of my colleagues at the University College Dublin, Lisa Padden particularly, have been very much involved with AHEAD in the universal design kind of evangelization, I think, really, in Ireland. And it's very, very strong. A lot of academics and different educators, not just, kind of classic college academics now, are taking up the UDL banner. So I've written 3 books on AI in education and accessibility and UDL. And I was asked to do the opening chapter for the new directions in teaching and learning as well. So UDL is important to me, and it's something that I came late to as a teacher. I was when I found it, I was horrified that I hadn't known about this for the 15 years that I'd been teaching previously. But I'm doing my best to catch up. So that's that. So why should you stay for an hour? And I know we haven't got an hour, Diana, before you start worrying. I know we've only got 45 minutes and then we're going to do questions. We just want to have a chat about incorporating accessibility into materials using the tools that we already know. And I love AI. I'm a total nerd. So we're going to show you some AI stuff as well. It's not just about text, it's about imagery, it's about multiple means of representation. We are going to show you a few things, hopefully some of which you won't have seen before. But do feel free to heckle, question, comment, put things in the chat. Rob is going to moderate the chat, I think. And if there's anything important that one of us needs to talk to, Rob can come on and just point us in the right direction if there's too much in the chat. I'm hoping that's okay, Rob. Yeah, you're nodding. That's good. Okay. Well, let's just start with this one then. This is an image that was created in Microsoft Copilot. So Microsoft Copilot is one of the ChatGPT type tools. And the prompt that I used to go to Copilot to create this image was generate me an image around accessibility perception in UDL and AI. Yeah. And if you haven't played with any of the AI tools and ask them to start creating images, it's a bit magical. It's a bit like, Harry Potter, seeing the moving pictures on the walls and all the rest of it, doing this. Now, depending on the AI that you use, you will get different types of picture. Some are more photorealistic, some are clearly kind of cartoony. So don't just stick to one tool. There are many, many tools out there now, and they will all give you slightly different things. It's quite an interesting thing just to study this image for a minute. An image around accessibility, perception in UDL and AI. And it has us all sitting at screens, in a kind of classroomy situation. But, what biases do we perhaps see or not in these images? And, depending on the images that you generate, be aware that the AIs are highly influenced by the prompt words. And even changing one or two words can make a huge difference on this. Elizabeth and I recently started a new podcast called I Lotter Things, which is all about this. And we did a whole episode on prompting and the need to be careful, but also the need for awareness. Okay. So as Elizabeth has just put in the chat, and I'm always awestruck by Tom Tobin when he does his presentations, because he does this so well. Whenever an image comes up, he describes it, in detail. And I'm always forgetting to do this, which I know is really bad. But an image with a robot head in the center, school desks with screens in the center of the tables, students sitting on chairs facing the desk, lots of small icons floating in the air with cogs, graphs, and other items. So that gives people who have kind of sight difficulties or no sight, some idea of what we're seeing. So must remember to do that better. Okay. I can't remember whether this is my slide or yours, Elizabeth, so I'm going to take it.
Away.
Universal design for learning. When we're starting to look at perception, and perception seems to be something which has run through very strongly from CAS 2 to CAS 3, and we'll be looking at that a little bit later on. But it's this idea of being aware, being cognizant of the fact that people perceive things in different ways. Some people perceive things through doing. Some people perceive things through vision. Some people perceive things better by listening or by engaging, by tactile engagement and stuff like that. So perception, and then the participation and involvement in learning, in the experience of learning. Perception is really, really important to think about that as an educator. So when we are creating our teaching and learning materials as educators, and I suspect that most of you on the call today are educators, how can we provide universal options for the material that we are sharing with our learners so that they can engage with that and perceive it in the myriad of different ways, rather than just expecting everybody to read a report, or take a PowerPoint deck and that's the only thing they've got. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so this is the updated CAST guidelines. And this was updated yesterday because that's when they were released. So we are nicely up to date with this. And you will see a lot of stuff which is common and we've seen before. And there's perception in the middle. But there is new stuff in here as well. So new stuff on identity, diversity, bias, multiple means of knowing and ways of knowing. But perception is kind of staying there as a core. So that's really where we're going to focus tonight. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand over to Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. So that very first row was highlighted on that slide, and that just points to the fact that top row is generally centered around accessibility. And one of those key parts in accessibility is perception, and perception is the guideline that we're really going to talk about today. So if we were going to phrase this in a different way, we could say, is the information presented accessible, and able to be comprehended or understood. Now, sometimes our first thoughts might go to individuals who may have sensory or perception disabilities, and thinking about options for ways that those individuals can perceive information. But I want us to really broaden our thinking and remember that inclusion and UDL is about everybody. So what we do to create accessible materials, we can make sure that individuals can access and perceive those when they're engaging with resources in different environments. You know, perhaps you're on a train and you're listening to a lecture, but you've forgotten your headphones. How can you access that material without the audio? Perhaps you have a migraine and you don't want to be looking at a bright screen that day. So there are various different reasons why having options can be really beneficial for everybody. And we also want to make sure whatever we create, that we have the capabilities for that resource to be able to be accessed by technology. So people may be using technology to either access or to enhance that experience, and we need to be cognizant of that and ensuring that our resources are capable of providing that. Over to the next slide, Joe.
Sorry.
Thanks
there
so
we
much. Thank you. So from the earlier version of the guidelines, what CAST was asking us to do is to offer ways of customizing the display of information. So provide resources that are flexible enough to offer that customization, to offer alternatives for any auditory information, and offer alternatives for any visual information. Now, this is phrased slightly differently in the updated guidelines. It's about multiple ways for that information to be perceived, but you may be more familiar with these particular points. Now, to get us really thinking about what this could look and feel like with the tools that we probably already have available, I'm going to go through just a few examples, looking at Zoom, looking at Word and PowerPoint. So for anybody who hasn't dared to venture into that world of AI just yet, or want to know what is there without AI, we're going to start with this before we hand over to Joe and do that really AI deep dive. So in terms of Zoom, we're going to talk about closed captions and customization. So what you have available in this Zoom platform is the ability to actually turn closed captions on. So there should be a button on your toolbar that has show captions and a CC. If we actually click the little arrow beside that CC, we then get to a menu that asks us to open up those caption settings. And if we do open those caption settings, there is the ability for us to personalize the way that captions actually appear. So we can change the color, we can change the font size, and I believe there's also the ability to adjust the way that translations actually appear. So if you want closed captions to come in one color and a translation to come in the other, we can do all of that in the Zoom platform. And why is this important? Well, for any auditory information on a Zoom meeting, we want to have an alternative mode, and having that text-based mode is going to be the way to do that. Now, we also have the ability to optimize and customize our audio too. So we have an audio button, a mute button, and there we go. So if we click, we can highlight that mute button. We can actually have that little upwards arrow, which again opens up a menu. That menu can take us to audio settings. And one of the features I really want to highlight here is we actually have the ability to change the background noise. So it may automatically be enabled for you. What it does, it can block out background noise before it actually hits everybody else's audio. And that's really, really interesting to think about in terms of keeping our closed captions clean and not having unusual disturbances in those closed captions. So if you ever want to just check on that and check that your audio is being optimized, you can go to your audio profile and select that Zoom background noise removal. Okay, so let's think about Word. That Word platform, believe it or not, actually has this incredible tool that is called Immersive Reader. So if we were to go to Review on our Word toolbar, under that tab of Review, we would then be able to click on Immersive Reader. And if we click Immersive Reader, we get this whole new panel turn up, which has a variety of options here. And what Immersive Reader can do, it allows us to customize a Word document without actually changing the Word document itself. So we can adjust the column width, we can adjust the page color, we can even do something called line focus, where parts of that page get blacked out and only 1, 3, or 5 lines get displayed at a time. So for someone for whom visual information may be overwhelming, we can actually reduce that level of overwhelm and focus in on particular parts. We can also adjust the text spacing. And for people who are learning English as an additional language, we can also break words into syllables. So without any additional work from us, we can click a button called syllables and it breaks that into parts. We also have the ability to read that text aloud, which I think is really exciting, all within that Zoom platform. But keeping in mind that we want these documents to be really accessible to everybody, if someone might be using a screen reader, we also want to be sure that any headings or structure in that document is identified. So if we then go to the home button, we can then open up the options of styles and be able to tell the word system when a heading is actually a heading and differentiate that from regular text. And what that does, that means that any headings within our document will be announced and also be navigated by, rather than just sitting as regular text and that structure disappears.
Yeah, Elizabeth, there's a question in the chat regarding recordings for captions. Do you clean them up to correct them? And while
really
the
great
auto
point,
captions are great,
Christina.
yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I always clean up my captions. Sometimes you can't do that in the moment. That can be something you do on that recording later. And very recently, I have been spending a lot of time cleaning up some captions from my inclusive teaching classes. And there have been some really hilarious errors. So we definitely need to check those. We definitely need to correct those. And I think one of my favorite errors lately was that coyotes were mentioning London. And I never said anything about coyotes mentioning London. It was about co-teachers talking about inclusion. So really great reminder there to always check your closed captions, because if someone is relying on those closed captions to receive that information, we want to be sure it is accurate, so we have a really accessible and equitable experience. Thanks so much, Christina.
Jennifer's asked a question as well there. Can the immersive reader options be utilised successfully by a blind person, or will the JAWS software still be required? I mean, Word is enabled with tab movement for all the different options, and if you've got accessibility turned on in Word, it normally reads where you are when you tab, so you should be able to get to everything on any of the menus like that. It may not be, quite as easy as using a mouse for a sighted person, but you should be able to navigate on any of the menus, including the immersive reader menu.
And looking at the immersive reader options, the option that would probably be the most relevant there would be read aloud. However, if someone's already familiar with their screen reader technology, they might find that screen reader may be a more accessible experience. But those options should be available there, but these do change the text mainly in a visual way. However, that read aloud option is available there. That's a really great question. Okay, so now we want to talk about PowerPoints. What can we do in terms of our PowerPoints and accessibility? Well, as Joe mentioned before, for any images, we also want to think about that alternative means of presenting that information. So on a live webinar like this, that would include audio description. And as Joe already mentioned, Tom Tobin is a master at this. So please go check out how Tom actually describes images and some of the ways you can just integrate that seamlessly into a webinar. For us, though, if we're presenting these slides to somebody and then having those slides accessible afterwards, we want to make sure that that information that captures that image is actually available in that alternative form. So what we can do, we can go to the tab called Review, and we can open up the Accessibility Checker. An Accessibility Checker has a range of different options for us to select from, and one of those is alt text. If we click on that alt text, it then opens up the alt text panel. And Joe, if you just click a couple of times, hopefully those will highlight.
Nope. Yep.
Thanks so much. Okay, so we get to that alt text panel, and what we do here is we can put in a very brief description of of what is included in that image so that people who might be accessing that through a text-based form rather than a visual form have equitable access to that information. And we also have a button there to generate alt text for me, but please do check what is generated because it's not always accurate. It's getting much better, but not always accurate.
Okay, so that's some of the tools that you're already familiar with. I just want to maybe show you a couple of things that you may not be aware of. Claude AI is another of the AI tools, which is now available to pretty much everybody, I think. It was only recently made available in Europe, but it's been available around the rest of the world for a while. And if you just Google Claude AI, then you will get to it. And I'm actually going to show you Claude in action in a little while. But I noticed that they have a dyslexic friendly font. Yeah, and I notice I've got a typo on that slide. Apologies, we'll get that fixed. But if you go into Claude AI and you go into the top right-hand corner for your kind of account settings, you can actually choose the dyslexic friendly font under there, and it changes the whole screen font to dyslexic friendly. And it must have kind of brought that top of mind to me. So there it is in the font selection down here, because I recently upgraded my very old Kindle to a new one in the latest Amazon Prime Day. And I noticed when I got it, then I went into and had a look at the fonts, that the Kindle reader now has an open dyslexic font available. And I hadn't seen that before. So if you have got dyslexia and that might be of interest, you may not have known that the new Kindle devices have a dyslexic friendly font option. So the screen at the moment has an image of a Kindle showing the font settings to choose that open dyslexic font. Okay, and in the instructions thereon. Okay. I switched over from Google Chrome as my browser when the AI wars started up, about 18 months ago, and when I was finding that the Copilot was a very good AI, and for a while it didn't work in Chrome, but it only worked in Edge, and that was enough to push me over to Edge. So I found out when I did move over to Edge that the Edge browser also has this learning toolkit. So if you are in the Edge browser and you type in Edge, EDGE://learning/, then you get into this learning toolkit. And there's a screenshot of the learning toolkit screen here. So we have a math solver, a PDF reader, an immersive reader, and a button for read aloud. So very similar to the stuff that Elizabeth was showing us a little bit earlier on in Word and in PowerPoint, but this is built into the browser as well. So that stuff is potentially useful as well. Okay, so there we go. So that's that one. So on to my kind of favorite subject of the last couple of years, I suppose, which is AI, and how can AI help in facilitating UDL and personalizing learning, and helping with different ways of perceiving perhaps learning. One of the things AI is very, very good at is converting content. So you can take content that is in one format and you can ask the AI tools, give it me in a different format, summarize it for me, summarize this paper into, something that a 14-year-old child could understand. Yeah, or translate this into another language. Now, I take on board the chat comments earlier on about the translation tools not yet being perfect, but my classes in master's level project management are typically 50 or so students, maybe 8 of whom are from Ireland. I would typically have 3/4 of my class from either China, India, or parts of the world where English is not their first language. and they come and they study a master's program that is taught completely in English. Yeah, my Hindi and my Mandarin are atrocious. Okay, so I can't speak anything really apart from English. But my students, I encourage them to use AI. And one of the ways that almost all of the non-native English speakers use AI now is as a translator in real time during the workshop sessions. I don't call them lectures anymore, but also for converting, material, English papers perhaps into other things. So some practical examples. And I know we're kind of, relatively pushed for time, so we can't work through all of these today. But Zoom AI gives you automated summaries of calls, meetings, webinars. But as has been pointed out, read those summaries carefully, because they'll be 80% good, but it's the 10 or 20% that catches you out, isn't it? And particularly with things like the summaries of the meeting where it's got the action points, I found that I had some actions that I had not been given in the meeting in those action points on a meeting the other day. So it's not just the text that is extracted, it's the summary of the text where the AI is saying, Joe said this, or Joe promised to do that, or whatever. So just make sure that you always check all this stuff. A pretty good tool with a free tier is otter.ai, OTTER.ai. I've had a paid subscription for Otter for 18 months now. But you can get, I think, 10 hours of transcription a month on Otter on the free plan. And you can also upload recordings, videos, and previous, meetings, and Otter will then generate a transcript. But one of the nice things about Otter is that you can also then say it's a podcast that Elizabeth and I have been doing. Yeah. Well, if I upload a new podcast episode into Otter that we've recorded, it already knows Elizabeth's voice because I've tagged a few paragraphs previously. These were Elizabeth speaking. So it tags Elizabeth automatically. It remembers her voice. Yeah. So that's very, very useful when you are doing this stuff. And Tom's just put in the chat, thank you, Tom, the auto-generated transcripts in Zoom are actually Otter whitelisted on a license. I didn't know that either. Every day's a learning day. Wonderful. Okay. You can ask all the AIs to do simple things like create a lesson plan. And I'm using these things increasingly with the students now, where we will start to explore a topic. And I'll say, well, okay, let's see how this lesson's going to work. Let's ask ChatGPT or Perplexity for a lesson plan. And then we'll analyze that and we'll say, do we think that's going to cover the bases? And maybe we'll split the class up now and set different parts of the class tasks to go off and further research different areas of that lesson, and then come back and present to the rest of us and stuff like this. So allowing students to engage with material can be really, really useful. But there's a really fun one that I want to show you, and this is using the Claude AI. So I'm going to flick over into Claude. Boom, there we are. So I'm now so if you are sight impaired or blind, I'm now in the Claude on my browser. So this is https://Claude CLAUDE.ai/new. Okay, now I'm on the pro plan, but there's a free plan for Claude as well. Okay, so you don't have to be on the pro plan. I find this really, really useful. Diana does too. Yeah, I love the tone from Claude. It's got a different voice. Yeah, and it feels much more natural. But one of the things that Claude introduced fairly recently was this thing that they call artifacts. And I'm going to show you an artifact being created now. Okay, so it's asking me, how can Claude help you today? Create me an interactive HTML quiz on UDL and perception aimed at teachers using UDL. Now let's throw a little spanner in the works, because they've only been out 24 hours. Yeah, use the CAST 3.0 guidelines. Let's see. Okay, so I've asked it to create me an interactive HTML quiz. So I'm going to hit the enter button now. And Claude will now have a think. And after a few seconds, the screen splits. And it's now generating the code for an interactive web-based quiz on UDL. Okay, and this code is fully editable if you know about kind of, code and stuff. So we now have on the right, we have a UDL and perception quiz for teachers. First question, which UDL principle does perception fall under? Okay, so, and if I click a question, okay, so what this one is doing is it's making me answer all of them at once. Okay, so question 2, which of the following is not a guideline? So I'm just going to take the first answer for each of these. True or false, providing captions for videos is an example of offering alternatives for auditory information. Question 4, which is an example of customizing the display of information, sign language, font size adjustment, or glossaries. And then what does UDL stand for? Okay, so I'm going to submit my answers and it gives me, oh dear. Yeah. Diana's never going to have me back. I only scored 1. Okay. So that's okay. So what I can do now is I can go back and I can say, well, how do we make this more accessible? Okay. So I'm going to say make the interface more accessible and colorful. Ask one question at a time and give me a running score, for incorrect answers. Explain the correct answer. And nobody told me about my spelling mistakes there. Okay, so now I'm asking it to go back and update it. Okay, so now it's going to recode it and it's hopefully going to give me what I've asked for. And if it doesn't, you can keep going around this. Okay, so you might think, okay, this is all very, very interesting. What's this got to do with, say, UDL and perception? Okay, well, my next prompt will address that. So just hold your horses for a second. Okay, so now we're asking one question at a time. Okay, so which UDL does perception fall under? Submit an answer. Okay, 1 out of 1. And now, is it asking me oh, there we are, next question. Okay. Okay, so let's just submit an answer. Now that was an incorrect answer, and it's told me what the correct answer is. Okay, so this is getting better. Yeah, but I also want Claude change the font to a dyslexic friendly one and make the whole quiz more accessible. And let's see what it does with that instruction. Okay. Okay, so it's going to use a different font, and it's found an open dyslexic font, which is designed to increase readability for readers with dyslexia. And it says it's going to make several other accessibility improvements. And once it's finished doing its coding, it will tell us on the left-hand side what changes it's made. Okay, so that we'll be able to see that. So here we go. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so if I scroll back up once it's finished writing, it's made 12 changes. Okay, so we've got dyslexia friendly font, it's increased the contrast, it's made the font sizes bigger, it's improved spacing, ARIA Live attributes to dynamic content areas, ensuring screen readers announce changes. Okay. I don't know what ARIA Live is. I don't use a screen reader, but I mean, it knows that this is something which is helping for accessibility. Larger click and tap areas, making them easier to select, especially for users with motor difficulties. We've got numbered questions, reduced motion. So we've taken out animations and transitions, lots and lots of stuff going on here. Okay. So now we've got a more accessible quiz. Now I can publish that quiz now. So if I publish that, yeah, publish and copy link. So that link is now copied. And if I put that in the chat for everybody, you can now click on that link and you should be able to bring up that quiz in the in your own browser. So, you know, you can create something like this and then you can share it with your students. Yeah, you could discuss with your students the creation process. You could ask them for ideas. How would we improve this? How would we make this better? Yeah, or you could get a team of colleagues, you know, on a workshop and run a UDL workshop where you're looking at, well, let's have a look at the teaching materials and could we come up with something that was more interactive and see what Claude will give us and then kind of hone it to exactly what you want. Okay. And you can copy the contents of this in as well. So lots of possibilities here for you know, just creating really interesting engagements with AI, but then also using the AI's kind of general knowledge to improve things like accessibility. Rob, any questions that I've missed? I saw a lot happening in the chat window.
Nope. I think we're all set there. Elizabeth has responded to a few in the chat.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let me dip back into there. And I've also, I created an interactive quiz earlier, just in case we had any connection problems. So that QR code will take you to the first quiz that I created as well. Okay.
We do have a quick question, Joe. Would the HTML code need to be changed when using it in the LMS? And can these be used within LMS?
Yeah, I mean, depending on your learning management system, if it takes just standard HTML code, you know, that you can paste in as a web page, then that's what this is. It's just standard HTML. So you can just save that as an HTML file. And if your LMS will accept an HTML file, you're good to go. Otherwise, you could just save that link. Yeah. And then insert. I mean, we use Brightspace, and I know I can add in a link to an external resource, so I could just put the link into my quiz, and the students could click on that, and it would open as an external resource. So Jennifer, yeah, you should be able to use those within the LMS. You know, either by importing the HTML direct or by using the link to the HTML. And that persists. I mean, that doesn't get taken down. So, you know, as far as I know, it's there.
Yeah, I have a question too, because I use Claude all the time. And so watching you do what you did, which was really fascinating because I use it for other things. And the one area I was wondering, and it's because I've used HTML in an LMS where you can put it in, but then I was trying to get that information that you created, that quiz, into a Word document, and I was flummoxed. I didn't know how to get it to a Word document. Do you have any tips on that? If a Word document might be more appropriate? If not, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look. Can you convert this quiz into a Word document format for me? Yeah. Let's see what it'll do.
There you go. That's my answer. I should have thought of that.
How about that, Diana?
Yeah, that's all good for me. Yeah.
There we go. Look, answers as well. Everything's in there. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Yeah, and then you can just copy that and paste it into your Word doc, and you're good to go. And this is one of the things with a lot of these AI tools. And I mean, like Diana said, she's using Claude the way she uses it, and I use it, and perhaps you see something, oh, I've not thought of using it like that. Yeah. And really, this is the thing. We all do things in slightly different ways. We all teach in different ways. We all process information in different ways. One of the things that I do with my teaching is I have a standing invitation to any other staff member in any of my, who knows me or whatever, to come in and audit any of my classes. Yeah, and I love it when they do. Yeah, because they come in and they'll sit in on a class, and a lot of my classes are online. So if anybody wants to ever come in and audit one of my classes, just drop me an email. Okay. And I always ask other educators who do that, will you then critique the class for me? Okay. Will you kind of tell me what you would have done differently and why, and, how I can improve things? And it's a fantastic way of cross-pollinating what you're doing and your practice. And I've learned so much from other educators because they see what I don't see, because I'm teaching in a different way. So that was my reminder that we are almost on quarter two. So let me just go through the last couple of slides, and then we've just got a little bit of finishing off. So Copilot and the other AIs are great for pictures. We're not going to have time to go through the AI generator, but alt text can be generated by the AI tools. But again, be careful and read through the alt text and make sure it's saying what you actually want it to. Yeah. CRISP, KRISP, is a fantastic tool, an AI tool for cleaning up audio. Okay, so if you haven't looked at CRISP and you're doing a lot of audio work, then CRISP is a fantastic tool for cleaning audio up. So we're just finishing off with different resources. Elizabeth, do you want to talk to yours?
Absolutely. So if you were interested in any of those points around the heading structure, there is a blog post that explains why that might be necessary and how we can all benefit from things like that heading structure in Word. Also thinking about that idea of customization, that you can really use this for yourself as well. Have a look at the settings on your device, and one of those might be something like your mouse pointer. So Joe has a bright red mouse pointer with a highlighter green outline, which makes it more visible on the screen. And these are things that you can adjust yourself in your settings. There are also some articles on equity and inclusion, just to remind us that, this idea of UDL really sits in that landscape of inclusion, and how can we make our resources more inclusive for everybody. And I'd also like to give a shout out to the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training, ADCET. They also have lots of resources on accessibility and UDL as well.
Absolutely. And I'm just seeing a question in the chat there. Andrea was asking, would it convert to a slideshow and generate related images? I don't know whether Claude would generate the slideshow directly, but you could certainly ask Claude, convert this quiz into a slide deck, set a set of prompts for a slide deck, and then you could drop that into PowerPoint now. Yeah, because PowerPoint's AI will do that. Gamma will do that. Tome is another one, TOME, that will do that. So there are a number of tools out there. I have an AI for Education newsletter that I release once a week on LinkedIn. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see the newsletters, these Artificial Intelligence for Educators newsletters. And I've covered lots of these tools in the 49 episodes of that newsletter that I've released so far. And they're also covered in my 3 books as well. And I was talking with Lillian Nave fairly recently on her, I think, UDL podcast as well about a lot of this stuff. So there's links in the deck to all that stuff as well. Okay, and Christina's just put in one that I haven't come across before. Thank you, Christina. I'm going to actually make a note of that one. I'm just going to grab that and copy it. Will the text of the chat be available on the Padlet, Diana?
We certainly can put it up. Oh.
I think because there's been a few things put in there.
Yeah, we can put it. We can upload it to the Padlet.
Right. That would be great.
how helpful it will be to people, but sure, we can do that.
Because there's a few links to useful tools and things there. So,
and what we can do is we can grab the tools themselves, Rob.
Or the tools themselves.
Yeah, we'll just grab that. These suggested tools, just about Claude and creating slide decks. It's amazingly good at doing that. Especially, especially, and it will even offer suggestions for the kinds of images. And what I've found, if people are not familiar with Claude, and I'm sure there's other, and I have the paid version too, so is that you can give it 2, 3, up to 5. Yeah, there you go. It does a beautiful job with slide deck. Yeah. And
wow.
It's wonderful. And if you ask for images, suggested images, although it can't create images, it will create the HTML for an image.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. And it's given it, so it's I just asked it to create the slide deck. So what it's done is it's created a markdown kind of slide 10, slide 9, with the questions and the answers and stuff. And then it's given us on the left-hand side the instructions of how to then bring that into PowerPoint and, have it kind of make the deck. So, but you could take that, you could just copy that text and drop that into something like Gamma, and it would just generate the deck for you. It would add in appropriate graphics. And if you haven't tried Gamma.ai, that's jaw-droppingly good for creating new decks. So have a look at that. Yeah.
And there's a question here. All right. So Rob, can you pop the links in again? Somebody's looking for the Padlet.
Yeah. So our last resource is the iLotta Things podcast that we started about a month ago. So that's myself and Elizabeth and Darren Britton. We're kind of Elizabeth and Darren quite linked in with AdSet, and I've been doing a few things with them recently. So that's exploring accessibility in UDL and AI. And then there's some links to some other accessibility tools at the end of this deck. And this deck is on the Padlet. So you should be able to get to the deck and then through the deck get to all these links. My personal takeaway on this is I just am learning so much, and you just have to be able to ask the right questions. If you go to a lot of these tools and you ask the question, you'll very often get an answer. So run down the rabbit hole. Open one of the AI tools and ask it something, and then follow it with further questions and further questions. But also don't forget other people. We've got 55 people online tonight. There were 250 odd, I think, signed up for the session who perhaps will listen to the recording. Reach out to your colleagues and to your wider colleagues in this wonderful network. I've not met Tom yet. I've been to a couple of things he's talked about. I've not met Elizabeth yet, or Diana, or Rob. But we're working together. We're learning and teaching each other. And I find that is something that's very often overlooked. All this fancy AI stuff is great, but the people around us are better. So don't forget about that. That's my big takeaway, I think. Elizabeth.
Thank you. I think for me, it's how easy it can actually be to increase perceptibility and make things accessible. We have those tools like built-in accessibility checkers. They don't catch everything, but they're a really great starting point. We now have those areas of AI where we can start to generate some alt text very quickly. And the more accurate that becomes over time, that's going to make our jobs even faster in terms of providing those other options. And so I really hope you feel empowered that there are things that you can do today with the tools that you already have available. And there are so many things you can explore with AI. And it's been an absolute honor to present with Joe, to present in such a wonderful webinar series with excellent colleagues, and to be here with you all and learn from you as well. I'm really honored, and it's been a really great way to start the day.
And it's been a good way to end my day as well. So thank you very much.
If people have questions, we have time. If people want to ask questions, unmute. Wonderful session is what you're getting. Lots of great sharing. that people are saying you did. So if anybody wants to stay on, we have a few more minutes to share and to talk and to engage. So I don't know, Joe, if you want to stop your screen share and then, see if
I
anybody
tell you
else.
what, if I've got a few more minutes, let me give you a little bonus tip. Yeah, let me do that then. So because this is another thing that I have found recently that I love. Okay, I've kind of started to use Perplexity as my main AI tool. Rob's nodding. Yeah, so I'm not the only one. Yeah, Perplexity is fantastic, and now it has a pro account as well. Okay, but let me ask it to tell me about the CAST 3.0 guidelines and how they differ from the old ones. Let's see whether it'll do that. So I'm using the pro search, and you can see it's going off and it's doing quite a detailed search. So now I get an answer and I get all the links to the different sources that it's used to generate these links, and the sources are also referenced in this link. Now that's great, but what you can also do with the paid account is you can convert this kind of information now to a web page. So this is called Pages. Okay, so this is now creating me a navigable, you see I've got a navigation thing on the right there, web page about the CAST 3.0 guidelines updates, and it's writing this page out, and it's putting me different sections in. Okay, and once this is finished, I can publish this as a persistent web page. I can also go in and edit this. I can add in more information. So there we are. We've got the basic page now. Now I want some media. Okay, so let me put CAST 3.0 guidelines in here. Let's see whether it'll bring up. Okay, right. So there we are. So there's a YouTube on the guidelines. So I'm going to make that part of my header. Okay. And then we can come down here. So equity and inclusivity. So find some media on that. Yeah. So there we go. Another CAST thing in there. And then here we are. Add some more media here. So that's given us some stuff on community development. And there we are. There's an intersectionality resource toolkit. Okay. So I'm going to publish that. And now, if I send that to you all in the chat, you can access that page now. You can click on that and you'll go to the YouTube video with Jenna and Nicole. And this is just such a fantastically amazing quick way now of generating and sharing information. Now, I didn't have time to go through that in detail and check it all. Okay. So you must do that. You can't just believe everything that the AI tells you. But I'm finding that Perplexity is better, Andrea, than ChatGPT in general. And you can point Perplexity at your AI of choice. So if you prefer Claude, or you prefer Mistral, or you prefer ChatGPT, you can point Perplexity at any of the other major AI engines, and it will use that as its kind of brain. So you get the benefit of these features, but you can also basically use it with any of the other AI engines. So there's a little bonus for everybody to take us up to 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock my time anyway.
Yeah. The last, Christina put the word of caution in the chat about, well, I'm going to add a couple other ones. So definitely what they're doing. She called it scraping WEP pages. It shouldn't, we also understand there's biases in the algorithms that are there. So there are words of caution. But if Obviously. You're someone who knows the topic and understands how to write the prompts, it's like having a good, how I talk about it is have a good student worker with me who can help me. And then I, hopefully, I'm doing the right thing with all the things I've gotten. So it is 3:00 US time, and it's summer and it's hot in my office right now. So thanks to everybody who stayed on. And David Yates, thanks for your kind words about these webinars. We really appreciate it. So bye, everybody. And I'm going to log off, Carrie, because I need to jump on another Zoom. But thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day or morning or evening, wherever you are. Okay, bye-bye.